Welcome back to this Streamlit tutorial, part 5 on layouts. This is when we start getting into how Streamlit applications are put together and how charts and other elements on the page are going to work together in a layout. To start, we're just going to start out with a bit of a page config. Really, the only thing that matters in here is this sidebar state is collapsed. So when we build a sidebar, it will be collapsed on page reload. As always, you're going to want to do Streamlit run app and then open it up in your browser. First, we're going to start out with columns. Columns are created by calling st.columns and then giving it an integer, which defines the number of columns you want to generate. So right here, we're creating 2 columns, and then we're deconstructing it into column 1, column 2. One way you can call columns is by doing column instead of the st and then whatever element you want to use. Or the way I prefer is using with column 1, and then you can define whatever you want within that. So I'm just going to put a button in there, and then if you click it, it shows it. And then if you want to use column 2, it would just be with column 2, and then whatever code you want inside column 2 would go inside of there. Up, we have containers are used to group together elements. To create a container, you do just st.container, but like with columns, you can use a with to define all the elements within there. So we're going to do a with container and then define a few buttons, and then we're going to add a nested container by calling with container again and adding a container inside of it. As you can see, this puts a container within the other container. This can be useful. It's like a div, honestly. Third, we have empty. Empty is used much like a placeholder. A good way to illustrate this is by defining a placeholder equal to empty and then looping through it and waiting a second. So now we're going to have a countdown, updating and done. This is useful for progress bars and things like that. The expander element or layout is much like it sounds. It hides and shows content. So if you want to hide some settings or show some settings, that's what I typically use it for. You can do so. You can have some settings in here for advanced settings or whatnot. And you can also nestle columns or containers within the expander element. Up next is forms. So we're going to actually do a whole section on forms, but just to overview, a form is a group of input elements with a submit button. A form must have a submit button though. So this has to be called within a form or you will get an error. But this form, just you can input some stuff, hit the submit button, submits it. It's good for getting some user input data, but we're going to go into it a bit more in detail in a future episode. Up next, we have sidebars. Sidebars are exactly how they sound. It's a sidebar, good for doing like file upload areas or some settings areas. Or if you're making a chatbot, you can keep old chats in here. Last but not least, we have tabs. Tabs are useful for breaking up your plots into more easy to understand and easy to navigate areas. Right here, we're just going to create 3 tabs, dog, cat, owl, and then we're just going to throw some pictures of dogs, cats, and owls in them. Let's close this sidebar. So here's our cat, here's our dog, and here's our owl. Simple as that. Hope you enjoyed this part 7 about layouts. The layouts are pretty simple in Streamlit, but you can combine them in different ways to create some complex layouts overall. Up next in part 8, we have chat elements. That one will be actually extremely short, but Streamlit has some special elements for chatbots that are good to know if you're interested in building those kinds of things. I'll see you next time, and thank you for joining me.